Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, January 15th, 2018. We want to recognize first off that we're holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nations people. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item before we get into the meeting is I want to thank our city clerk for providing the verbiage on our new guidelines for council meeting decorum. Council, the Chair, CAO, and City Clerk each have roles and responsibilities at public meetings. Specifically, the Mayor or Acting Mayor as Chair has the authority and duty to take all measures necessary to ensure meetings comply with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw, and workplace laws. Council meetings are open to the public and are both a political and democratic forum and a workplace. Council duties are to ensure that members of the public have a reasonable opportunity to express their views or concerns. And the proper rules of order are: 1. Only one speaker at a time will have the floor as directed by the chair of the meeting. Please do not interrupt or call out comments while another has the floor. Anyone speaking out without having been acknowledged by the chair will be found out of order. If that person does not refrain from speaking without having been acknowledged by the chair, then he or she will be required to leave. 2. For the members of the public speaking, the comments need to be respectful and constructive. Discriminatory or defamatory comments or comments that are in the nature of harassment will not be tolerated, and anyone engaging in such communications will be found out of order. If a speaker is found to be out of order and does not refrain from that commentary, then the speaker will be required to leave. This is a public meeting, so all comments can be considered publication. 1. Harassment. In terms of comments about city employees, employees of the City of Nanaimo have a right not to be subjected to discriminatory or defamatory comments or personal attacks against their competency or character. All speakers must refrain from such comments about identifiable staff. Comments should be limited to issues regarding the city's policies or operations. 2. Discriminatory comments. Section 7 of the Human Rights Code prohibits a discriminatory publication because of race, color, ancestry, place of origin, religion, marital status, family status, physical or mental disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, or age. Discriminatory comments will not be tolerated. 3. Defamation is publication about a person that tends to hurt a person's reputation. Defamatory comments will not be tolerated. Please stick to known facts and keep the dialogue respectful and constructive. Thank you. And again, thank you to Ms. Gurry for word crafting that. Next item, introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the addendum this evening, we are adding to committee recommendation number 4, Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program. We're replacing the recommendation as shown on the addendum. For agenda item 8A, committee recommendation number 5, Finance and Audit Committee recommendation from the 2018 January 10th meeting, Northfield Boundary Highway 19A intersection upgrade. We're adding that. We're adding report titled Update on Automation Project Phase 1 to agenda item 10A, and we're reordering the agenda accordingly. And we're also adding agenda item 12C, Development Cost Charges Reserved Funds Bylaw 2018, number 7256. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And does Council have any other items? Councillor Brennan.
I do. I would like to ask Council to add Ms. Hildy Schlosser, SCHLOSAR, and allow her to make a representation regarding Nanaimo Association for Citizen Advocacy. So I'd like her to be able to speak. Maybe I could get some direction from the Mayor as to where you'd like that to be.
Well, first off, we require a seconder, and we'll need to vote on that, Seriatim. Councillor Armstrong?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And on that item, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Gurry. That would be placed where?
It's Council's prerogative, but I would suggest under 15, other business.
Thank you. 15A. Very good. Is there anything else? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to request that Ms. Helen Stewart be added as a late delegation to agenda item 10B, which is DP 1062.
10B. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Beswick. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Be under 10B. So can we have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended then, please? Moved by Councillor Beswick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we go on to the next item, which is motion for the adoption of the minutes. Is there any reason to take any of them seriatim, Council? Move them as a block. Moved as a block, Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I have no mayor's report tonight, so we'll move on to administration. Committee recommendations. Finance and Audit Committee to be introduced by Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I have the privilege of bringing forward these items as the chair of Finance and Audit Committee, a committee that is formed of the entirety of mayor and council and meet weekly for the most part since November while we were establishing the 2018-2022 financial plan. That said, the first item from the Finance and Audit Committee is the operating results for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2017. And the recommendation is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council receive the report titled Operating Results for the 9 months ending September 30, 2017, dated 2017, December 7, for information.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 2 is the capital project results for the 9 months ending 2017, September 30th. And the recommendation is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council receive the report titled Capital Project Results for the 9 months ending September 30, 2017, dated December 7th, 2017, for information.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Thorpe, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 3 is that the Council expenses for the 9 months ending 2017, September 30th. Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council receive the report titled Council Expenses for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2017, dated December 7th, 2017, for information.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Armstrong, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
This is item number 4, and is this on the green sheets as well? And is it the green sheets? My ask to the clerk is it the green sheets or the white sheets?
I wonder, does everybody have a copy of the annotated?
Your worship, through you to council, no, just I think you and I have that copy. So yes, oh, you do all have it? Okay. It is the green sheets, Councillor Bestwick.
The green sheets?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item number 4 then is we replace the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program as follows. Finance and Audit Committee moved and seconded, recommends that Council provide an approval. We'll do these seriatim. Recommends that Council provide approval in principle to establish a Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program and direct staff to return to an upcoming Finance and Audit Committee meeting with a bylaw regarding the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program for Council's consideration.
Okay, so you're moving number 1?
If that's the
Seriatim?
prerogative.
Yeah.
If that's the prerogative.
Okay. And seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And number 2 has already been read.
Okay, so you're moving number 2. And
Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong is seconding number 2. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Then I'll just flip the pages on the green, and it's that Finance and Audit Committee recommend Council direct staff to increase the funding for the Northfield Boundary Highway 19A project by $525,000 and defer additional rail infrastructure upgrades until such time the railway obtains funding required in order to reinstate the passenger rail service.
So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Yocum.
Just quickly, through you to Mr. Mema, I've heard, I don't believe it's accurate from what we've gone through, but there's some belief out there that because this project's being delayed a bit, we've driven the costs up. Can you give me some clarity on some of that rhetoric, please?
The report that came to Finance and Audit noted that what has happened is some of the work that was supposed to be done in 2019, we've moved to 2018, so that accounts for some of the costs. And then the second aspect of it is that we just got an updated cost because when we went out to tender, we were using old cost estimates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to staff, $525,000 is, if I'm not mistaken, that the provincial government was going to kick in roughly half. So are they going to kick in half of this 525, or is this all on the city's plate?
So this will still be subject to a cost sharing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hong basically asked my question. I just wanted to confirm that there was cost sharing still involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, just again on that. So 525 will be split in half, or it's 525 each, province and
That's
city?
split in half.
Split in half. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further speakers. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Beswick, if he could flip back to the white pages now, or, yeah, okay, thank you.
I have flipped back. However, my question to you now is number 5 on the white pages. Is number 5 supposed to be number 6?
In the annotated, which is the one with the red in it and stuff, no, the one you just moved and seconded is near the end. So we've gone forward and now we're going back. So the numbering is okay.
So if you could just, so am I doing the regional district dated November 16, 2017? Thank you.
That's correct, yes.
Finance and Audit Committee recommend that the Council of the City of Nanaimo consent on behalf of the electors to the adoption of the Regional District of Nanaimo Economic Development Service Establishment Bylaw number 1769, 2017, and further, that the Regional District be notified accordingly.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Finance and Audit Committee to be introduced for December 13th, to be introduced by Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. This item is Nanaimo Art Gallery Operating Grant, and the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve a $30,000 increase to the annual operating budget for the Nanaimo Art Gallery commencing 2018.
So it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, is the Nanaimo Art Gallery the same as the Nanaimo Arts Council, or are they different? Is the Nanaimo Art Gallery the same people as the Nanaimo Arts Council?
No, they're not.
They're
Okay,
separate.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Bestwick.
Next item, Harewood Neighborhood Association move that the Public Safety Committee recommend,
No.
I'm sorry.
Culture and Heritage Grant recommendations.
I do not have that. There we go. My apologies. There we go. The Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve the 2018 Culture and Heritage Grant funding operating and projects recommendations of $330,052 as outlined in the report titled 2018 Culture and Heritage Grant Recommendation 2017, December 13.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Scope change and project update for Harewood Centennial Park Improvement Phase 2. Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve the transfer of funds from Parks and Recreation projects as outlined to the Harewood Centennial Park Phase 2 improvements as follows. Up to $330,000 to cover overall Phase 2 park implementation work as outlined, and up to $220,000 to change the playing surface from asphalt to concrete as per user group preference, with information from design, costing, and feasibility returning to Council prior to final decision regarding switching the playing surface to be made.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 4, that the City of Nanaimo and School District 68 joint development of community field at Nanaimo District Secondary School, use of surplus funds for bleachers. The Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve the use of remaining joint City of Nanaimo and School District 68 project funds for the installation of a concrete pad and bleachers for the NDSS community artificial turf.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And last on my sheets is the College Heights Water Mains Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council direct staff to proceed with allocation of $550,000 from Water Supply Reserve to replace additional water mains in the area of the College Drive Water Main Project.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item, 3, is the Public Safety Committee meeting for December 7th, 2017, to be introduced by Councillor Armstrong.
There's a recommendation made that Council read a letter to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Attention Judy Darcy, MLA, for support in providing an emergency response team based out of Nanaimo to deal with addictions, mental health, and violence.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is Public Safety meeting for January the 4th, to be introduced by Councillor Armstrong.
There's a recommendation for the implementation of cameras in taxi cabs. The motion is that Council direct staff to prepare a report regarding options to implement cameras in taxi cabs in the City of Nanaimo and include community consultation with all stakeholders.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Seeing no questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Finance and Audit Committee recommendations for January the 10th, to be introduced by Councillor Bestwick.
Your Worship, we did that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, we did.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one, Advisory Committee minutes. Is there any objection to take them all together? Seeing none, is there a mover?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, appointment of Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2018 municipal election. To be introduced by Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to all of Council, this report is just to start the election year off and to appoint the Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer to commence the preparations for the 2018 municipal election.
Thank you. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Yoakum. Any discussion? I just have one question. I knew there will be a report developed with respect to dates and so on and so forth that will come forward to us at some point in the future?
Yes, Your Worship. There's going to be an amendment to the election bylaw because there's some changes in the numbering of the legislation in the Local Government Act, so that will be brought forward to you. And in that bylaw is also, it sets out the dates that there'll be advanced voting and the election date, etc. So that will be brought to you for your update and approval.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is on public services, and that's item, number 10. First one, under A, is the update on the automation project Phase 1. Mr. Bill Sims, Director of Public Works and Engineering. Good evening, Mr. Sims.
Evening. Thank you, Your Worship. So you have in front of you an information report for Council's reception, and it just really covers some of the results of our review this past fall into the first phase of automation rollout. And so the information just explains some of the detail that we have discovered under phase 1, and lets Council know that in the next few months we'll be bringing back a more detailed implementation plan for phase 2.
Thank you very much. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Brennan. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Discussion. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Sims. Are we committed to these trucks now? Seven large trucks and one small truck? Is this the final straw? Can we change our mind to go back to 6 and 2, or where are we at with that?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hong, we are committed to 7 large trucks and 1 small truck.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, I know we've had some concerns from the neighborhood in the Brecken area about size and trucks trying to get in and stuff. I have a concern that as the city builds and we start filling in these smaller pieces of the city and all these infills, and with all these cul-de-sacs that are smaller, are these bigger trucks going to be able to go into those areas? Is 1 small truck going to be enough to do that?
It's an excellent question, Your Worship. Councillor Hong, we've reviewed that, and the reason that we switched from 6 to 2, 6 large and 2 small, to 7 and 1 was not only it was more cost effective, more efficient, we can get more, and 1 truck will efficiently cover some of those smaller areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sims. My only question is pretty broad, and it's in relation to page 5 of the green sheet, and it's the second page of the report. And it indicates that Public Works will be developing a comprehensive implementation strategy for Council to review prior to commencing automation project phase 2. And so my question just simply is, when do we anticipate the entirety of phase 2 to be undertaken? And then my next question will be the implementation plan, given that I'm thinking that we've had to order the receptacles in the trucks. And then the implementation plan will also address the impact of the Regional District of Nanaimo not entering into the anticipated contract with Nanaimo Organics Waste. Is that impact business plan case, if you will it be like a 10-year impact? Or how do you see that report coming forward? So 2 questions, I guess really 3 questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. As far as the overall implementation strategy, we see this as just kind of a project management plan that shows the timing. We're still on track to order the trucks and have them here in early spring, and to have the carts start rolling out late spring. So we're still, that's the theory. However, with the implementation plan, we'll address some of those risks and contingencies should we run into some challenges. What do we do in the interim? Not sure at this point if that will have an impact on the timing. We would hope not, but we would want to sort of suss out all of the potential impacts to timing and cost as well, should this contract not be signed.
Just a follow-up, if I may, and thank you. I just have one last question, if I may, please. Is it reasonable to assume that all staff that will, once we get the new vehicles, are all trained, and we would be able to commence once all the homes have their garbage bins? So training is already accomplished?
Well, the training will be accomplished as time goes forward. That'll all be built in. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be bumps in the road, but I will say another reflection of phase 1 is that we were really pleased. It went a lot smoother than we thought. We'd still ask Council's patience and the community's patience as we roll out phase 2, because we know there's lots of learning to do and lots of questions to ask and answer. But we're convinced a year from now will be in great shape and nobody will ever want to carry a can again.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to staff. I still am hearing concerns from those on limited incomes where they don't always need the large bins. And is there any possibility that we could even have those tags like 3 times a year? Is there that possibility? I know right now it's for 5 and then it's going to be phased out. Could we possibly look at having an additional tag for those on limited incomes that may need that extra garbage once or twice a year? Because I think it's very difficult for some of them to have to purchase the larger bins when they don't need them all the time. So I would just like that to see if that could maybe be looked at further. Thank you.
Councillor Yocum. Or Hong, pardon me.
Oh, no.
No, go ahead, Jerry.
No, I already spoke. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sims. And I just want to recognize my comment wasn't on your decision, but I just want to recognize and for the public to realize there's been lots of chatter out there about this program, and I really thank your comment for the public to be patient. But I want to state in the report, which is public report, is council approved 7 trucks, 1 small, and 6 and 2 were purchased. I mean, sorry, 6 large and 2 small was a motion, and 72 bins, and an internal decision that didn't come through council made it 7 and 1 and 76,000 bins, which came to almost $500,000 over cost on the original motion. So I want to state, like, that's costly. To me, that's a costly internal decision not to bring to this table, and pleased that we're going to just ensure that doesn't happen again, because we got a couple more phases happening. And to me, that conversation needs to be had. So that's why I'm bringing it forward, and want to ensure that $500,000 internal unilateral decision in-house doesn't happen again. So I had to bring that forward, and for those comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Hong.
If anybody else would like to speak, I'm on my second time. No? Great. Thank you. Just on page 5, I guess what Councillor Bestwick mentioned. With regards to commingled waste, can we still pull out of that option? Like, if we see that we have an issue with now that we implemented phase 1, can we tell the residents saying, hey, sorry, at this point we are not going to take yard waste because of XYZ situations at the RDN and now and such? Do we have that option to pull out still and not implement yard waste? That's the question.
So, Your Worship, if I may, for Mr. Sims, it's a very good question, and that's one of the issues that we're going to be addressing in the implementation plan that comes forward. Mr. Sims indicated that we're going to have some more contingency plans. Council's approval in March 27th, 2017 was premised on contracts being in place with Nanaimo Organic Waste, Inc. that could handle the capacity of commingled kitchen and yard waste. Unfortunately, in October, city staff learned that that contract wasn't in place and that alternatives need to be looked at. And one of the consequences of that contract not being in place is that that facility is almost at capacity for processing phase 1 commingled yard and kitchen waste, and would require to make changes and upgrades to their equipment and their facilities, this is what I'm advised, in order to be able to be in a position to handle the capacity of the entire city. We had counted on that being done over the summer, and as a result of learning that that had not occurred, staff are now looking at alternatives and costing out what the impact of the delivery of commingled yard and waste would be. Where would we deliver it? What would the cost be of those? And so we're not able to answer that with any precision at this time. So I'd ask your patience to let us go back, and in our implementation report that comes forward, we'll have had some time to have a conversation with the RDN and other potential service providers for that particular service. Included in the implementation report is that council is the decision maker here. And in March 2017,
you decided that you were going to change from manual to automated solid waste collection, and that you were going to raise service levels and add services to that. Council is always able to change the scope of service delivery. The things that we can't change are the contracts, procurement contracts that we've signed. So we're getting 7 in 1, and we're getting 76,000 carts. But the rest of it, there is some latitude to be able to make decisions, and we will work through those and bring them back for your consideration. Also, as part of the implementation report, will be an update on the user fees. So depending on how the contingency plans are and the metrics that we get from phase 1 and looking at phase 2, there may be a change to the user rates.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next one is development permit application number DP 1052 at 3712 Polaris Drive. It's to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, this is a watercourse development permit for the subject property. It's a development permit seeking variances to our watercourse setback along the oceanfront from 15 meters to 10.3 meters, the purpose of which is to legalize an existing deck and allow for the demolition of a one-story sunroom and for that sunroom to be replaced by a two-story addition. In keeping with our principles of variances for watercourses, there's no net loss to the habitat. There's a proposed 113 square meter replanting plan. It's a condition of the development permit, and that includes removal of invasive species and security bonding and a five-year maintenance period for the monitoring of that landscape area.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lindsay? Councillor Bestwick.
If there's no questions, I was just simply willing to make the motion to.
We do have a delegation.
Oh, there is a delegation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that. Yeah. Sorry.
All right.
I'll wait.
Any other questions for Mr. Lindsay? Seeing none, will Councillor Hong? Okay. So we have a delegation. Ms. Helen Stewart.
No, sorry. Chair, the delegation was for the next one.
10B.
10B. Helen Stewart was for 10B.
Your Worship, you're right. This is 10B, but it's because we renumbered, so you're probably looking at the original agenda. I was expecting a delegation for this one as well, Your Worship. So I guess it's for 20 Prideaux Street, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. That's probably my fault, but I did say it was for DP 1062.
Okay.
So it's the new 10C.
That'll be the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. A question to staff. I see their replanting plan, and they have a Gary Oak, 2 Gary Oaks in there. My question is why are they so small? Gary Oaks aren't fast-growing trees. Why are they only 1 gallon Gary Oaks? Wouldn't it make more sense to get a more mature plant to plant in there?
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. My understanding is that Gary Oaks are more opportunity to be successful if they're planted at that size. So the 1 gallon size is the recommended size for transplanting, rather than larger trees, which we often see when we're doing different tree species.
And thank you. And then just to follow up on that, do we have a plan to ensure that these plants will survive?
Yes, Your Worship. So we have as a condition of the DP, we'll take a 100% security in the form of a bond for the works, and then there's a 5-year maintenance period. So the owner and the author of the riparian assessment report are responsible for monitoring those improvements and ensuring that any dead plants are replaced and that it's able to establish on the foreshore.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
I would so move, given that there's no delegation, that Council issue development permit number DP 1052 at 3712 Polaris Drive with the variance reduce the watercourse setback from 15 meters to 10.3 meters.
Seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is development permit application number DP 1062 at 20 Prideaux Street, also to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned, it's a development permit for the subject property. This is for a 57-unit seniors housing project. It's a project that's being proposed by the Mount Benson Seniors Group, and they're actually a society that has seniors housing actually very close to this property in the downtown, so they have a long history of providing affordable seniors housing. So we're excited about this project. It is supported through BC Housing, and there is a delegation from the architect that's here this evening to give you some more details on the project. What I would say is that there's two variances as part of the project. There's a small height variances for portions of the building, but there's also a parking variance. And on the surface, the variance looks very large. It's from 57 to 17. What I would note is that if the building was a seniors congregate housing project and it actually allowed, had restaurants or cafeteria space for residents, the parking demand goes down considerably. Because it doesn't qualify for our strict definition of seniors housing, so it falls back into multifamily. The multifamily rate requires 1 per unit. But the proposal that's before you this evening, we think is actually supportable given the type of use that's being proposed, given the history that we have of seeing similar uses operated within very close proximity to this project, and given the fact that the owners and the society is prepared to register a housing agreement on the title, which would ensure that in the long term the units remain available for affordable seniors housing. So for those reasons, Your Worship, we're supporting the application and recommending that Council proceed with the DP.
Thank you very much. So we have two delegations. The first one is Mr. Dariush Feruzli. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Worship, and all councillors for opportunity. As Mr. Lindsay mentioned, this is all about the affordable housing for seniors in the town. Let's just go very fast in some in this. Here I do like to make attention to some flat roofs in the area, the 2 apartments right beside, and the other one, as you see, there is a lot of rooftop units, and also lots of black dirt which will be seen from everywhere. These pictures taken from the highway. Basically, the property is in the lower area and will be seen in all around the area. So it's important to have a very good presentable roof plan, sustainable with the shade. This is actually the building right across. They will see the roof of the building, the roof, some angles from Purdue. Apartment right beside, again the Purdue Street apartment. Some pictures from the different buildings in the area, just give you some perspective, the location and type of the buildings in the area. It is, as Mr. Lindsay mentioned again, if this was the senior congregated, they need the 1 parking stall per tree, which we are exactly on the 30%, 1 per tree. I was involved in many senior housing in the town in the last 11 years. Those zoning bylaw we have is actually old, I believe, because once they provide the food, actually is not very affordable for seniors, and I've seen a couple of projects takes a couple of years to fill in. Affordability is very important, and the park, and there is our client provide the letter. They do have a 206 unit in the area, and out of these 206, there are just 5 of them they double. The 201 is single occupancy, and just 57 parking owned, which is charged for rental. This is about the height of the building. The red line and the building shows how much we allowed. Almost 1/3 of the gable or that the pitch roof is above, 2/3 is above the allowed area. And imagine someone standing in the third floor in the other side with the 5 feet eye elevation can see right through the ceiling as a roof of the building. With those pitch roof, we basically creating some presentable buildings, creating some area your rooftop unit can be high, and I believe it's going to be better view for those people. So overall, these two variants we're asking height. I think in our practice, we are very careful about the silhouette of the building, roof line, because we do think give the sustainability to the building, give the character to the building, and make the is a better building overall. So we think we did address that one with those slope roof. And regarding the parking variance, is all about the senior affordability for seniors in our town. So I think this is a good opportunity to the seniors in the town to have these affordable rentals. I don't have any more. I have, if there is any question for me, I can answer.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, through you to the delegation. Thank you for your presentation. Do you have any of these suites that are going to be wheelchair accessible?
Yes, based on the BC housing requirement, 5% of the units has to be accessible. We have 2 or 3 units in the main floor that are accessible. 5% basically have to be accessible unit.
Okay, because I know that's the minimum, but why are we doing the minimum when this is specifically a seniors housing? It would make more sense if you actually went above and made a few more of these units, because as we know, this entire population is aging, and when they can't walk, if you're forced to leave the complex because of those conditions, it just seems to make more sense to have more of these units to accommodate for future needs. Thank you.
Sorry if you don't mind, Worship. Based on the BC requirement, all the units has to be adaptable for accessibility. So all the units, they are adaptable, but they are not. They are just 5% of them, they are accessible. But we, for sure, the unit size is not different. We can change as many as we want. We do have elevator. We can have as many as we want.
Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, of course, parking's a concern for me, as that neighborhood has limited parking already, and a lot of seniors do drive, and they continue to drive. So is there any street parking? Because I think like 17 is not even half of what is going to be living there.
The Mill Street is very narrow one. I believe it can be, I don't know if the city has any plans to change there, and we are right in the corner. We do had the original design to drop off area in the front of the building, but because of the proximity to the corner, civil engineer did not think it's going to work. City staff didn't support that. So there will be some of the Perdo. There is opportunity there. I'm not sure if
it's always full.
Yeah, but it's all the projects I was involved in last 10 years. The seniors rate 1 to 3 is actually more than what they do use. That's my experience in town last 10 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Did you wish to speak? I'll push the button. There you go. Councillor Brennan has a question for you.
BC Housing is, either partnering on this or setting all the standards that you have to meet the...
That's correct.
And they provide seniors housing throughout the province. They have these...
Correct.
Yeah. So they're satisfied that this will meet the needs of the residents?
They do have a own guideline and booklet. We've been meeting all of those guidelines. That's correct.
So that would indicate that BC Housing is satisfied that the number of parking spaces is consistent with the need for seniors housing of 57 units.
That's most of the BC Housing regulation is based on the standard and the building. We are meeting the Step 3 code, which is very high and almost LEED gold. Some of the items related to the cities matters, they don't have that regulation. They are satisfied with the building. I don't believe they do have a parking requirement per se in the guidelines, but they are satisfied with the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. See no further questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So the next delegation on this item is Ms. Helen Stewart. Good evening, ma'am.
First thing I should say is thank you very much for approving me to come in as an extremely late delegation, because I sent in the email request last night at 10 p.m. I'm speaking on behalf...
Can we have your address for the record, please?
I'm speaking on behalf of 24 Prideaux Street, the neighbors of 20 Prideaux Street, and thank you very much for going back to this plan, which is what I was about to ask for. I'm a member of the Strata Council. The executive of our Strata Council are present. I'm the vice president and treasurer for our Strata organization. We are not actually opposed to this motion. As presented, we support Mount Benson Senior Citizens Housing Society. We feel this proposed development is a good thing, both for the city and the neighborhood. We have a separate issue. As you may have noticed in that progression of slides that went by, there is an extremely large blank concrete wall between 24 and 20 Prideaux Street. And unfortunately, the property line is 1 inch away from that wall. And that wall is a structural foundation wall that helps hold up our building. We need to do a repair. In order to access this wall, we're going to have to go on to 20 Prideaux Street. And unfortunately, when this subdivision was made approximately 20 years ago, the property line was not reassessed and no easement was granted. So we need to be able to get at this wall to help hold our building up. And we've got a problem with the current plan as presented for this development permit. We're going to have drainage issues. We're going to have accessibility issues. We're concerned that we're going to have, I'm sorry, I'm working from notes from 3 different emails here, one of which comes from the engineer who's helped us with our report on how to do our repair to our structure. We do have drains that come off this wall that are going to flow into 20 Prideaux Street, which are a problem both for the new ownership and for us. We've got the problem that there is a setback along the property line there that is approximately 300 millimeters. I worked that out, it's maybe 1 foot. We're concerned that this exposed wall, which we need to get at and work on and make no longer exposed, is going to degrade. So although we support Mount Benson Seniors Housing, and we really hope this gets built, we're actually going to ask you if you would please delay giving a building permit here, or development permit, until the property line can be assessed, until an easement can be granted, until something can be done that will allow us access to our wall now and in future in order so that our building will stay up and not come down. I wanted to finish with, this is not the fault of anyone at question. The current ownership of the various strata condos at 24 Prideaux Street, it's not our fault. It's not the new owners of 20 Prideaux Street. It's not even the city's fault. This subdivision happened more than 20 years ago, and nobody caught it. So we're asking, please, that this be reviewed and that this error be fixed so that both structures and buildings can successfully move forward into the future.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions for the delegation? I see none. Thank you very much, ma'am. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presenter. Extremely legitimate, clearly. And I just defer to staff. Just defer to staff, Mr. Lindsay, to provide some form of reconciliation on the presenter's concerns and whatever you can fill us in with.
Your Worship, I almost don't want to start with this fact, but I was actually here 20 years ago when that first phase was building. So you have some history on this. And that building was actually originally intended to be the first of two phases, and on the subject property was going to be the second phase of that building, and the parking was intended originally to be interconnected. So I know the wall well and the project well. I'm certain, I think the good news here in this proposal is the building is not being proposed to be built up next to that retaining wall, so I think access to the retaining wall will be available in the long term. You can see here there's surface parking that will be up against that wall. I'm confident that we can work with the property owners and register or work towards an agreement, if not a reciprocal easement of some sort, to make sure that the needs of the strata are satisfied. I would say that's quite separate from the form and character DP that's in front of you this evening, but I hear the message and we'll work with the parties to come to a satisfactory conclusion.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan. Okay, Councillor Hong.
Thank you. If I can get the Roche back up, but I think I understand where the residents are concerned, but like I said, from the drawings, it seems like to me that that dotted line right there is the actual building, and those posts, those pillars were, well, we had that picture right there, is actually a way. Is that correct, Mr. Roche?
To the worship, yes, the setback is 3 meters and our building is 3 meters off, so it's not 300 centimeters, 3 meters. So the building is 3 meters away.
Yeah.
And we are not asking for reduction on setbacks. And as Mr. Lindsay mentioned, there is lots of land space available for any repair on that wall.
Thank you. And I just wanted, if you can scroll up a little bit, just up a tad bit. Right there for the delegation, it says 9.8 feet, which is 3 and then 3 meters underneath it. So it's going to be 3 meters away from your wall. I hope that answers your question. Not 30 millimeters, what you?
No, not precisely.
Ma'am, Councillor, please go through the chair.
Okay, I didn't know she left. I was actually.
No, but now we see what's happened.
Thank you.
Ma'am, please come forward.
Okay, so part of the issue is, yes, I agree. It looks like there is sufficient room, but in between those parking spaces and the wall, which is designated with the dashed lines, there's a landscape plan with irrigation lines. And if you pour water at the bottom of a foundation wall, eventually that wall crumbles. So granted, it looks like there's sufficient access. But there is a serious concern with how to keep our wall up.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I did not address that to begin with. Are there any other questions?
I do have a question for you. Have you got engineers that are working on this project now? Are they structural engineers?
we have a report from Great Pacific Engineering and Environment, who are the people who we've been meeting with to assess our wall and to help us figure out what the problems are and how to fix it properly. And I'm sorry, I'm running to the back of the report here. He's added all his name, after his name, all his initials. So he is an engineer. I believe he also is an architect. And they're the company we approach to say, we know it's a structural, and I'm sorry, it's not a retaining wall. It's a structural foundation wall. It's not like a fence. We can't move it, and it's got to stay up. And we're aware of the fact, as it was pointed out, this was originally 20 some odd years ago supposed to be a phase 1 and a phase 2. If phase 2 had ever been built, the wall would have been finished and both sections would have been an interior structured wall, and we would have both have been ready to work on it and help keep it up. But as it is, when the project stopped, nobody caught the fact that this was supposed to be an interior wall that is now exposed to the elements. And now, after many years, we're starting to have issues. We have to do a fix. And we need to make sure that there is always and permanently, forever, access to this wall. And there's nothing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you very much. So, is someone prepared to move the recommendation?
I have a question.
You have a question to staff? Okay, go ahead.
Can you, I'm trying, Mr. Lindsay, can you provide us some thoughts on that, or some comments, some answers, maybe?
I think my first high-level comment would be, if council does want to make a motion on that topic, it should really be separate from the first issue, which is the form and character DP that you're here to consider. What I've said, and I continue to believe, is I'm sure there's an opportunity to work between the two property owners, and if staff are given the opportunity, I think we could facilitate some arrangement. It's not uncommon to have situations like this and have right-of-ways to allow for access for maintenance. Those right-of-way agreements often include statements that say things like, if you remove landscaping or have to do other alterations to property while you're doing your maintenance, you have to replace that. So that's not an uncommon condition that would be in a right-of-way agreement, but I don't think a separate motion is necessary. I think we've heard the issue, and I think we'll work with them, but if council wanted to make a motion, I'd say keep it separate from, don't make it a condition of the development permit.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion, but I invite the delegation to return to us if they're not satisfied with the resolution that we propose. So I'd move that the development permit be approved with the following variances: increase the maximum height of a principal building from 14 to 15.25 meters and reduce the required off-street parking from 57 parking spaces to 17.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Beswick. And further discussion, Councillor Beswick?
Thank you. Just to follow up very briefly, but just to ensure that the neighboring, so the developer and the existing strata will be consulted all along the way of this new development in cooperation to ensure that both parties are satisfied. And I think that that's what you inferred, Mr. Lindsay, is that staff have heard that and that you will work with both parties to ensure that they're both satisfied moving forward?
Your Worship, staff will work with both parties in an attempt to find a mutual resolution that's satisfactory to both parties. We'll do our very best, and if there's necessary, we can report back to council, but at this point I can say that we'll put our efforts to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm having some trouble with this. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Lindsay for his assurances. because unless I heard those assurances, I would definitely not support this moving ahead. I think the delegation made some very valid points and concerns. But that said, I do accept Mr. Lindsay's assurances, and I'm sure that the groups can work together, and I also have respect for the developer of the new project. And I would love to support this project, the Mount Benson Seniors Housing. I think it's needed. I think it's a great project. But I'm really having trouble getting past the parking. And again, I respect staff's advice that this reduction from 57 down to 17 is appropriate. But my goodness, there's a lot of seniors that do still drive. And what about visitors? And I don't see any provision for that. And I just can't see it as being adequate. So that's my thought at this point. Maybe further discussion will change my mind, but I don't believe I can support this as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I'm just going to echo Councillor Thorpe as well. There are a lot of visitors that go to see seniors. I didn't see any parking there. I know there's parking is already an issue in that area. And to add another 57 residents, and even if you assume only 20 of them get visitors, there's 20 cars, where are they going to park? You know, you take half of them are probably going to have vehicles. That's 27, 28 people, and we only have 17 parking spots. So I can't support the reduction in parking spaces. I just think it's too difficult, especially for seniors that rely on their cars or rely on visitors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I will support this project and the variances. The organization that's building this know their clients better than we do. I don't know how many seniors will drive, but they know their clientele. I will support that. It's rare that we haven't heard any community feedback with regards to this huge of a parking variance in this area. So that's pretty much assures me that, you know, there might be some concerns, but we're not hearing the vocal people in this area complaining about it. So like I said, I will leave it up to the developer and the builder and the people that are running this facility. They know their clients better than anybody else. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I too will support this. BC Housing supports it. It meets the standards set by BC Housing for the kind of housing that they subsidize via assisting with the building. I'm not sure if where the subsidy for the monthly rents come from, but I'm convinced that BC Housing knows their clientele. Mount Benson Housing Society has been around for a long time. I've dealt with them myself. Again, I trust that they understand their client group. They understand the needs of their client group. And I was just trying to pull up the report, but I think that it said that only 20 to 30% of residents in Mount Benson's housing projects have cars. So that's why I'm going to rely on this report. I think that the facts have been presented to us. We don't have any evidence to the contrary. And when you add unnecessary parking, or when you add any parking, you start to impact the affordability for people who are intended to live there and be housed there. I think that we have, and I go over this every single time, but I know I'm getting boring to people, but we have a transportation master plan. It tells us that one of the primary concern is to move people out of the automobile and onto public transportation. This is perfectly situated for that. If you're a healthy and hale senior, you can walk into town. If not, you can walk up the street and get on public transit. There are all sorts of amenities and services for seniors in the downtown area. I'd like to see housing there that is affordable, and this will be affordable. And I say that because of BC Housing's involvement. So I do support this. I think it's a good plan, and I think we need to start to look at that population and realizing that it's going to expand, and we need to start thinking about housing for seniors, affordable housing. I think that we had the woman from it's not called the Christian Care Society, the Care Society that provides housing for women, talking about the numbers of elderly women who are coming to the shelter, and in fact some of them are being turned away because there's no room. If we can start now looking at providing that kind of housing for people who have a reduced income and are in need of affordable housing, then we should do that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I've lived in a townhouse complex where there was a 450-foot long wall that started to fall down from the day it was built, and it was 15 feet behind about 20 units of townhouses, and it was almost 20 years before we figured out how to fix the problem. We had engineer after engineer after engineer. They may require strong backs in there to hold that wall up. They may require an easement for continuous drainage. They may need an accommodation for the folks next door that are building this project to provide the drainage, to allow drainage for behind that wall. It's a challenge. It sure was a challenge for us. We finally got it figured out how to do it, but it was big. So I know that Mount Benson and their principals, their architects, and their project managers will look at this, understanding how critical it is that they cooperate with their neighbors, and I'm sure they will. I'm going to be in favor of it. Councillor Thorpe, do you have anything?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate Councillor Brennan's eloquence, and she's given me pause for thought. I would so much like to see this project move ahead, but I would be more comfortable if it was delayed until, number one, we knew more about what was going to be necessary regarding this wall, and secondly, if there was any way that the parking could be increased, even minimally. I just remain unconvinced that this is enough. So unfortunately, I regretfully will not be able to support this as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Armstrongs and Thorpe opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item. Development permit number DP 1065 at 5085 Uplands Drive, to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. This development permit is for a 59-unit project. The property, as shown on the image behind you this evening, it's 5085 Uplands, is a triangular property. It's an unusual shaped lot. The majority of the development that's being proposed as part of this DP is actually on what I would describe as the south end of the property, where the property is at its greatest width. There is also a parking variance being proposed for the subject property from about 1.66 per unit down to about 1.15 parking stalls per unit. I would note, though, that and it's you can't see it in this image, there is improvements, the frontage works and services for Uplands that will be completed as part of this project, and that will include a reserved loading zone for this building and additional on-street parking, which is currently not existing in the area.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Lindsay? Councillor Beswick.
No questions.
You wish to move the motion? Recommendation?
I do. I wish to move the recommendation that Council issue development permit DP 1065 at 5085 Uplands Drive with the following variances. Reduce the rear yard setback from 10.5 meters to 4.95 meters. Increase the maximum building height from 14 meters to 16.38. And reduce the number of off-street parking spaces from 97 to 68.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hong, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Lindsay. I'm sorry, Mr. Lindsay, I didn't quite catch what you said regarding on-street parking, or future on-street parking? Could you just repeat that for me?
Sure, certainly. Your Worship, so at present, Uplands Drive has not been completed on this side of the road. So as a condition of this development, or as a result of this development, frontage works and services will be triggered. So that'll mean the completion of the sidewalk, curb gutter sidewalk, street lighting. So as part of those works, the ultimate design of Uplands will allow on-street parking. So there'll be, and you can see it on the image here, it's labeled loading zone. There's a loading zone that'll be reserved in front of the building, but there'll also be in the neighborhood of between 18 and 20 on-street parking stalls that will be added that are currently not available at this time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to staff, just a question about, we keep talking about affordability, and we just saw a seniors housing project come forward. When buildings come forward for, I guess, variances, especially in parking, do we have the ability to, I don't want to say force the developer, but I guess we'll say force the developer to ensure that there are a couple of units that are for affordable housing, like in a rent-controlled subsidy kind of thing, or is that beyond what we can do?
Your Worship, I think that's one of the discussions that staff have with clients, and I think the last application you discussed is a perfect example of that, where we suggested that by registering a housing agreement on the title of the property that would run with the land would give us that guarantee that long-term there would be affordable seniors housing on that project. So yes, there are those mechanisms that are available. I would also say that with your new parking bylaw coming forward, I think there'll be we're anticipating to actually have some additional criteria about how to evaluate development variance permits and what are those conditions, and that may very well be one of them.
Great, thank you. Look forward to that discussion.
Councillor Beswick.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay, is it reasonable to assume that the 116 units, and this is 59 and the previous was 57, and making an assumption that it's on average 1,000 square feet, if they are, and I'm sure there's some that are less and some that may be more, is it reasonable to assume that each unit probably carries a value of construction build of $100,000 per unit? Is that just a reasonable assumption?
Sorry, I don't know the composition of the unit size in this project off the top of my head. I do know that in the previous application you just looked at, the units were relatively small, if I remember. But certainly that sort of, $150 to $200 a square foot is not, and I think that's what you're talking about, is not out of the realm of what we would likely see as.
Thank you. So it's and the reason for my question is just reasonable to assume that these are anywhere, with net of property, of course, is anywhere between $9 to $12 million in construction, and not to mention providing housing opportunities for 116 new or relocated or readjusting families or people. And I think that can't be lost. And I've always been one of those people to speak about parking, and I'm not a big fan of when we do parking variances. I never have been. But in the direction that we seem to be wishing to go, I don't think that we can deny the opportunities to house people as reasonably affordable as possible, and many people in transition, because I think, and you will know this better than I, and I would appreciate you indicating that our construction in the last 1, 2, and 3 years and moving forward has been nothing short of exponential in a terrific direction and growing each and every year. And just these two projects alone, one in the north and one in downtown, represent approximately $10 million guesstimating in construction business. And I don't know that we can, particularly in light of some of the communications that are going on around out in our city, that these are significant developments that have significant impact on housing and our economy, and making it so people can, and we all want people to live downtown as near as possible, and all of those, and transit and all of those good things. So obviously I'm speaking in favor of this DP, and I just think it's important that we keep a very open mind about many of these things, and not all parts of them do I like either. I'd like to say, I've spoken to Councillor Hong's point about the bare minimum on accessibility. I'm not fond of the bare minimum, and even though that the units can be adapted. So I think that we're moving in the right direction, and I hope we continue to move in the right direction in these regards. But thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I know parking's always an issue for me, but on this one, I do note that there will be at least one spot per unit, so I will support it because I think that, not everybody has two vehicles and at least there's one, and with the transit close. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Going to call a question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is DVP 333 at 650 Wekesaya Avenue. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. As you mentioned, this is a development variance permit in order to vary the height of an accessory building on the subject property.
Thank you very much. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 333 at 650 Wekesaya Avenue. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak to DVP 333? And for third and final? Seeing none, is there someone prepared to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion. Did you chime in, or are you shutting off? Okay, great. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one. Temporary outdoor public art selection to be introduced by Mr. Dale Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Worship. This is always a report that we look forward to bringing forward to you every year. As outlined in the report, this is a program that's been going on since 2010, and it involves the installation of temporary public artworks in primarily the downtown, but in the community. We've come to you with a set of recommendations for new works and new artists for this summer. This is a relatively, in terms of budget, this is a relatively small project, but it's one that we think the community enjoys, and it's one that staff enjoys working on.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just in the staff report, it said we had 17 artists/teams submitted 28 project proposals. Can you tell me what the number was the year before? Like, is this program picking up speed, or is it, slowing down, or are we plateaued?
Yeah, I'm sorry, through the chair. I'd have to get back to you on the numbers from last year. I have not had any indication from staff that the project's been slowing down. I think, if anything, I believe we had more installations last year than we've had in previous years, and the public response to those has continued to be steady.
Great, thank you. And then just to follow up on that, I think we heard a lot from the residents about that picture frame, getting removed because it's deteriorated. When are we going to have a discussion, or what is the plan for that area? Is that going to fall back onto a public art space, or have we decided to make that a permanent thing? Where are we with that? Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. That's actually a good comment. So a good question. The original frame came out of a previous temporary public arts. It was only intended to be there for one season. It ended up being there for a number of years, and I think was really well enjoyed by the community. It got to the point where it needed to be removed. It just was never built to be outside on that length of time. So we're going to work on different options to come back to council. One of those options could be replacing it with a more permanent structure.
So just to clarify that none of these items are actually going to go into that space. That's what I was trying to get at.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I couldn't say for sure that the program is growing. I think it is, but I think what's really interesting to note is the last time that I was on that committee, which was probably a year ago, there was an increase in the numbers of national applicants too. So we had lots of local, lots of national, and it was a really good mix, and something that I think we can be really proud of, that our program here gets national attention.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Lindsay. I don't have any questions, but I would like to commend the selection panel for their work. I'm sure it would be very difficult making these decisions. And I totally agree that this is a really fun project or program that we offer, and I think the citizens do enjoy it, and I hear a lot of comments about the various pieces of art that we do have around our community. So well done. Look forward to seeing these new ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone prepared to move the motion? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Yocum. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I just wanted to say I can hardly wait to see the rock dragon up close. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Bylaw 2018-7256. Is there someone prepared to move the recommendation?
I would so move. May we do all four at once, or must we do them in? I think we have to do them one at a time. We do have to do them one at a time. I would so move that Development Cost Charge Reserve Funds Bylaw 2018-7256 to establish citywide reserve funds for water supply, water distribution, roads, drainage, sewer, and parks pass first reading.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Would so move that Development Cost Charge Reserve Funds Bylaw 2018-7256 pass second reading.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Would move that Development Cost Charge Reserve Funds Bylaw 2018-7256 pass third reading.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And that Council approves transfer of balances collected as development cost charges for water supply, water distribution, roads, drainage, sewer, and parks to the respective development cost charge reserve funds contemplated in Development Cost Charge Reserve Funds Bylaw 2018-7256 upon adoption.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through the staff. Mainly to Mr. Mema. What do we do with the money in that reserve fund? Like, how do we get interest on it? And how much interest can we get on it?
All our reserve funds, we do invest them, and we obviously invest them in conservative vehicles, and we just get interest, but in very conservative vehicles.
Okay, I would like a discussion on that, on, I guess, options of what other options that we have and what other municipalities do with their funds. I'd like some information on that too.
So as a follow-up through your worship, we'll probably bring that discussion to the Finance and Audit, but I'll just make a comment to say all municipalities are subject to kind of like a standard vehicles through which you can invest in. And so we'll have that full discussion at the Finance and Audit Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, bylaws with no accompanying report. The first one is the 2018 to 2022 Financial Plan Bylaw. Is there a mover for the motion, please? Moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Just a moment. We're on adoption, actually, so there is no debate. Opposed. Show Councillor Brennan opposed. Thank you very much. And the next item is under other business. And that is Ms. Hildy Schlosser from the Nanaimo Association for Citizens Advocacy. Good evening, ma'am. You have up to 5 minutes. If we can have your name and address for the record, please.
Hildy Schlosser, Unit 9, 111 Wall Street, Nanaimo.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and City staff. We appreciate you giving Nanaimo Citizen Advocacy a few minutes tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Nanaimo Citizen Advocacy to request an emergency financing in the amount of $10,000. First, I want to just quickly mention that Laurie Bainart from Nanaimo Community Foundation is in the audience here supporting us this evening. Nanaimo Citizen Advocacy has been in operation for 43 years in this community, and most of you on council and in the audience probably know the work that's been done. If you don't know, just to give you a little summary, Citizen Advocacy does legal advocacy, general advocacy, and outreach for some of the most vulnerable people in this community. Some of the other services in the community, like the Food Bank, 710 Club, serve some of the same individuals we do in different ways. But we also serve other people as well, people who might be in crisis for a short period of time because of a traumatic incident in their lives, or people who are really struggling with the system. There are a lot of people who are on disability and need assistance filling out disability support applications, other government forms, navigating our very complex systems, getting into health services, applying for income assistance for disability or income assistance, accessing methadone at the clinic, you name it, anything that causes a crisis in someone's life. People come to Nanaimo Citizen Advocacy for that. And in fact, many or most community services refer individuals to Citizen Advocacy when they really can't serve them and don't know what to do because they don't have the same expertise as Citizen Advocacy. So after 43 years of successful operation and really operating on a shoestring, still as kind of a grassroots agency with a very small budget, with no meat on the bones really, but barely making it year to year, they have reached really what was a perfect storm this last year or two. For several reasons. Certainly one of the most obvious ones is the demand for the services have been increasing and increasing, and I don't need to tell you what the issue is around homelessness and poverty, new people coming into the community, and people who may be vulnerable and needing that kind of support. Those numbers have been increasing without corresponding increases in funding. We've also had a situation where the executive director, who had been there for 17 years, retired 2 years ago, and the bookkeeper, who had been there for many years, retired a year ago. And as you probably are aware, that replacing staff like that in a small nonprofit isn't always easy, and it's a transitional process, finding a good fit and finding someone that has the expertise and understanding of how to navigate the very complex funding models of nonprofit organizations. So we find ourselves in a shortfall this year. Without the funding, we're looking for $10,000 from the city and hopefully another $8,000 or $9,000 from perhaps United Way and Nanaimo Foundation, as well as some donations and fundraising. Without this money, we will have to look at closing our doors in February and not make it to our year end. We currently have a commitment from the Law Foundation to continue funding in the next fiscal year, which is April 1st, another $80,000. We have a proposal in to the BC Gaming for another $50,000 as they funded this year. We have several small contracts that are in place right now, more like fee-for-service contracts with Community Living, John Howard Society, and a small grant from the United Way. But we are just not prepared, having no reserve funding left available. We are not prepared for what we're facing this year. Options that we have right now and that we've been exploring, we have done some fundraising, got some donations. We've got a GoFundMe page. We've reached out to the Rotary clubs and other service organizations It is trickling in, but it's just not enough. We have nothing left for cash flow but let alone that, we are looking at a budget of a minus 18,000 this year with no reserve funding in the bank. It's an unfortunate situation to be in, but just like some of our clients, it's a one-off. I believe it's a one-off. I've been doing the books for the Society for the last few months. I just came in at the end of July, and
I need you to wrap.
Pardon?
You're over your time.
Am I over?
already.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Hence the blinking light.
All right. I'll just leave it at that then. I think you've got my message.
Thank you. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Beswick.
Mr. Schlosser, thank you very much for all of your services in the past and your presentation tonight. And I'm quite comfortable to hear whatever else you have to say to offer your request. Oftentimes, 5 minutes isn't quite enough. I could ask you a whole bunch of questions that could probably provide me with a whole bunch of answers. But if you have anything else that you would like to offer, I would be very happy to hear it.
With permission of the chair?
No, at this point, Councillor Hong.
I would therefore make a motion.
Councillor Hong.
I'd like to make a motion to allow our speaker to finish her presentation, and then I may have questions to follow.
Councillor Hong.
I'll second it because I have questions. She might have said the questions.
Thank you. Motion has been moved and seconded. How much additional time do you need, ma'am?
Just another minute.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to wrap.
Ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Carry on, please.
I just wanted to wrap up with saying that we are looking at strategies. As a very small organization, we know that the writing may be on the wall for the future of the organization. We are looking at the possibilities of merger or other options that will stabilize the programs themselves, whether it's with the current agency or in a new evolution of the agency. But we've got to get to that point, and it's going to take about a year to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know and thank you for your presentation, and see the value you've been championing for years in this with your group. I just wonder if there's an appetite, council, if I can make a motion for, is it Ms. Schaller?
Schlosser.
I won't even for council to make a motion for Miss. I'll try one more time.
Schlosser.
To meet with staff and see if they can come up and have a conversation and put it in the staff's hands with the delegate.
Thank you. Thank you.
That maybe
is there a seconder?
Be very fruitful in the.
So you're essentially suggesting that she meet with staff to get further information
and see where this pathway goes, because and it is going to end up in staff's hands if there's an interest in council going down this pathway, which I have one. So I'm just one person, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a seconder?
I'll second it.
Okay. Just
point of order. It's a subject.
Councillor Brennan.
Standing in front of us, and so we need either to finish off our questions or receive the delegation before we take motions.
We can go that way. I would suggest that the delegation will probably end up coming back up anyway.
I just wondered if we shouldn't be allowed to ask our questions before a motion
Thank
is
you.
made.
Thank you. No, I will rule with you, if you will. I have Ms. Gurry. Pardon me. It's Ms. Samra, actually. It's named improperly here. Ms. Samra.
I do have a question. That what is your timing, and that if a motion like that comes forward, if we came back next Monday with a recommendation to council, is that timing that works for you, or I don't know the magnitude of the urgency?
Yeah, it's tight, but it works. The reality is, in order to meet all of our final obligations, we would probably have to give notice to staff by the end of January and look at shutting our doors at the end of February. And because we wouldn't make it to end of March.
Thank you. Any further questions for the delegation? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Further to that, so from what I understand is you're just trying to figure out how to get by until April, I think is what you said, because you're hoping for 80,000 from the law group and 50 from gaming. So if you don't, so say you get $10,000 from the city of Nanaimo, how long will that carry you for is the question I'd like to ask, and then what are you going to do after that?
We have to get to the end of our fiscal year, end of March, and that would mean we need $18,000 to get there. The only other options, if we can't raise all of the money but can raise most of the money, is to lay off some of the staff. There honestly is no, I mean, the staff clean their own offices. There is no fat on the bone at all.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about, I just want to know, like, are you guaranteed, because if you're guaranteed this 80,000 and the 50,000 that is going to come, of course we don't want to inconvenience you. I just didn't know what the plan is. Are you expecting, or are you going to come to us on April the 1st and say that you need more money because you haven't got this and you have to pay staff? So that's what I was asking, when is your next cycle of funding that you're going to get?
The Law Foundation has notified us that they have approved $80,000 as of April 1st. They have also given us an $8,000 one-off technology grant right now. And we're still waiting for gaming. They don't usually announce until middle of January or a little later.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions for you.
Sorry, I was on.
Okay, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you through you to the presenter, Hildy. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate your presentation and the work that you do. My question is, for my benefit, and also I think for the benefit of people watching or following this broadcast, could you just give us some examples of what programs or services your organization provides to some of the citizens of our community?
Oh, where we apply?
What services you offer, how you help people?
Oh, okay. Well, our legal services, legal advocacy services through the Law Foundation assist clients in navigating very complex legal issues. For example, when they've been refused maybe income assistance or disability coverage, or they're are in family court or other areas that they can't get help for that aren't necessarily needing the help of a legal expert, but navigating legal systems where they have some legal rights. General advocacy, and I hope I'm interpreting that correctly. There's some great staff back there. General advocacy, some of that money comes from gaming, and that's for general advocacy, could be navigating other systems that aren't necessarily legal. There isn't a legal basis perhaps, but even getting into services that they can't get into. We have to remember that the people that we work with are people that have a very difficult time articulating their needs and understanding where they need to go, understanding complex forms and instructions, just feeling they may be suffering from mental illness or addictions, and are very vulnerable. And the big thing to remember, like a lot of people in the community don't know much about this organization, but if they closed, the people that are currently being served would end up in emergency services and other services in the community that are ill-equipped to deal with them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I'm just going to add a little bit to what Ms. Schlosser said. And that is, I know citizens advocacy very well. Some of the services they would provide would be for someone who is been found ineligible for income assistance because they don't have any ID. So the staff at citizens advocacy will go to bat for them, get them ID, get them on income assistance, and help them find housing. Those are the kinds of really basic fundamental services that people require, and that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for, is how to help people move from the street into into a home and with a steady income. I know that citizens advocacy will assist people who whose landlords have either withheld their security deposits, served them with termination notices, refused to give them any do any repairs, those kinds of things. So it helps people, again, stay in their homes, stay housed, and stay housed in places where the roof isn't leaking, where the toilet works, where the sinks aren't backing up, that kind of thing. They're absolutely essential. They work on a shoestring, and that has always been the case. They have volunteer receptionists. It's not like any other service that you find in this city where people are employed at the kinds of jobs that the volunteers do. The fact that the Law Foundation provides them with the grant is a really key piece of the work they do, but it really does not just do that piece. Those people that are working under the Law Foundation grant are able to assist with the other programs too. So they make a huge amount of work, and they make a huge amount of difference from a small amount of money.
2,200 clients last year, each one seen about 5 times.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. Ms. Curry, do we have a motion on the floor? Okay, so we can lift from the table now. Thank you. Can you read the motion?
Your Worship, I believe the motion is for the delegate to meet with staff to discuss options available and then have the staff report back to council. Next Monday, January 22nd.
Thank you very much. All right, no further questions. Call the question. Councillor Brennan.
I'm going to support this motion, but I really personally think that I don't want to defeat it because I don't want it to appear that way. But I think we can make this decision for $10,000 tonight. We've made those kinds of decisions before. This is a really essential service that this group provides us in this city, and they make a difference to the issues that we are plagued with, that we have talked about over and over again. Homelessness, downtown disorder, those are the kinds of things that are impacted by citizens advocacy, and I would like us to make this decision tonight and not make them go and talk to staff, but instead that we direct staff to provide $10,000. We've certainly done that before.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I support sending it to staff for some more information. One of the main reasons is we actually turned them down for some grant funding, so I'd like to know why to begin with. And then on the other case of getting more clarification on where this money is going to come from, because Mr. Memmer always asks where are we going to get this $10,000. So it's nice to have all that information, then we can present it to the public. In a week's time is not a long time. As we heard, they need it till by the end of January. So, and I think if we come back next week, we will have some indication of where that's going to come from. So I think for a better idea, and I think the public will be more open to it and seeing how it operates. Thank you.
Thank you. You can sit down, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Indeed, it's my humble opinion that we'll find the $10,000 in the next 96 hours. And I wouldn't like staff to be bound to just the request. I would like staff to entertain larger numbers and that may be extended and that may become a line item and that may become in our budgets for consideration and contemplation. I'm not saying that it will be, but I think that it leaves room for further discussion and it leaves room for further investigation. And I certainly empathize with this situation, as we all do, that this is urgent and it is an emergency. And if we can react positively and by the end of this week and give the citizen advocacy a response by the end of the week, I think staff can do that without having to come back to council to tell us what your findings were. But what your recommendation will be next Monday. And I will be comfortable with that, although we have made decisions on the fly in the past. And this is certainly one that I support. So I would like to see you explore more than just what has been asked for. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bema.
So, thank you, Worship. Councillor Brennan is correct. You've made some decisions on the fly, and I've been kicking and screaming while you do that. So what I'll probably ask we do is, I think every ask, I think, is well considered, but there's a process that you want to go through. There's some reviews, there's some due diligence that go through that process through every organization that comes to ask. I'm not saying there is no emergency, there is, but I think we can make a 7-day turnaround, having sat down with the society and just worked through and ticked some boxes, and we can advise council. And I think on Monday we can even have some identification of where the funding is going to come from. So if you could allow us that time, I think it would serve both parties pretty well. Because if you open that door, then you'll spend the rest of the year giving out money.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I know we have done it on occasion, and I'm never comfortable with it. I don't like making motions or supporting motions on the fly either. This is one that I might well be willing to support, but hearing that we can get the information back from staff in a week's time with their recommendation, then I'm much more comfortable with that, knowing that, yes, it's an emergency situation, but a week is not going to make or break. So I will support the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is question period. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Yoakum? We're close. Thank you. Oh. Okay, folks. Get yourselves settled in. First one, Mr. Ron Boland on item 10A.
Repeat to you this evening my question. You will recall that 10A deals with the new waste program that I have asked repeatedly and been told that I would be getting a report on the conditions under which the doorway to road service is available. Under what conditions is that available? I was promised that in a engineering, Public Works and Engineering Committee back in August. I have never, by Ms. Davis, I have never seen that report. And I believe that it is necessary for the public to understand what the conditions are with that service, and that is not a ability of staff to grant or stop. So I'm looking for the public contractual information about how that system is going to work. I ask again.
Thank you. Ms. Sammer.
System in particular?
This is the system where you currently provide the service of the waste people coming up to your house, getting the bin, taking it down. We have very peculiar situation here now with 80 pounds of bins to handle 20 pounds of average trash. Where we live, for example, we're on about a 35 or 40% grade up and down, and these bins will not be manageable. In barely, possibly manageable in good weather. In terrible weather, they're just not going to work. So I know that we have a program that there are several hundred people currently involved in that takes care of that problem by the service being provided to pick them up at the door, take the bins down, empty them, bring them back to the door. All I want is the conditions under which that service is going to be provided.
Okay, so I will undertake to post that information on the website by the end of the week.
It will be?
Yes.
Very good. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sammer. He has been asking for a long time. Mr. Bolden, 8A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera.
Yeah, it's just going through, I don't know if we've changed procedures here, but it was usual that when we were making recommendations, as I see here in 8A on, that the report that was involved would be attached to the agenda. This appears no longer to be the case. Is this a matter of a change in procedure, or how is a citizen supposed to read the capital project results for 9 months when the report is not given in the agenda?
Ms. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. This was a change with the committee process in the operating guidelines and the procedures, and it was brought to this table at council, and the reports and everything are on the finance and audit agendas. What used to happen is the same report that went to a committee was then attached to the council agenda, but this puts the onus on the public to read the minutes and the agendas for the committee meetings and have the chair who chairs those committee meetings be able to speak to those reports. So rather than duplicating reports and putting the same report onto the council agenda, the recommendations that come out of the committees are just now placed on the agenda.
So we're saving some paper and asking citizens to go look up all of these agendas and reports all over the place on the website, which is getting a little difficult to manage these days.
It's just one more additional point is that the staff report and recommendations aren't coming to council. It's the recommendations from the committee. So it's
yes. And so all I'm reading then, if I go to that committee meeting, is what they recommended. Well, what's interesting to me is what council recommended, right? I'm interested in the motion that came before council, not the motion that necessarily came before the committee, because I assume that there are cases where that is not the same.
The motion that comes before council is the one that's in the agenda, and that's based on the reports that came to the committee and the committee's recommendations.
Yeah, but I'm now the citizen, rather than seeing this in one agenda, is expected to go out and look at each committee meeting. That's my point. I think that's maybe saving paper and asking citizens for an overload, particularly in the case where that motion that comes before council may not be the same one that was in the agenda. So I make my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
I also wanted to point out that this is actually what the RDN does. So I think we've followed them. As the committee of the whole meeting comes, and then we have the regular meeting, and then the recommendations. It's not doubled done. So just to let you know that others do this system.
You do realize that most citizens don't have much. They never get a report from this council on what's happening at the RDN.
Yep.
So, and if you followed the RDN, I'd be in the respect that the minutes of their meetings come out immediately. The provisional minutes come out immediately as to what happened, what transpired at that meeting. And if somebody wants more detail, of course, they can, well, they can't, but we could go to the video, which is a complete record, and which I would very much like to see the province and the community charter adopt as an official record which I recognize it is not. But we're dealing now with official minutes that are basically started back in the 17th century. And I find that peculiar, to say the least, when there is an interpretation of what actually happened rather than what did actually happen.
Yep, agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, wish to respond?
Perhaps we could just put the link to the committee meeting beside it. Then it would be easy for them to access it.
So essentially what she's saying, if I'm getting this correct, in our agenda for tonight's meeting, there would be in the report, alongside the recommendation, a link to the report.
That's possible.
Yeah, great.
That's possible as long as citizens don't have to go hunt.
No, one click. One click. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, Mr. Barkley, on 8A.
Mayor and Council, my questions are to Council, not staff. I would hope Council is able to answer them. My first question relates to what Mr. Boland was speaking of, and it also does relate to 12A, the bylaw, the statement of accounting that Mr. Member presented. So I can go to the Finance and Audit Committee meetings, but the minutes. But what I cannot find is the videos of the discussions, and I'm quite troubled by this because there was no discussion of the 12A item at tonight because the discussion happened at the Finance and Audit Committee meetings, and there have not been any videos from those Finance and Audit Committee meetings since September 14th. September, October, November, December. It's 4 months of no videos. So can Council tell me, is it now policy to no longer display videos of Finance and Audit Committee meetings?
Councillor Bestwick?
I can't explain that for you. I've been in attendance at every one of those meetings. Many people at this table haven't. My attendance there is 100%. As the Finance and Audit Committee Chair, not unlike Chair Armstrong of the Public Safety Committee, I don't control the meeting other than chair it. I do a speakers list. I call the meeting to order. I try to keep a semblance of organization, but I certainly do not give direction outside of those boundaries. I don't control the agenda. I don't make up the agenda. I don't make up the minutes. I don't make up who gets to watch and who doesn't. I don't tell anybody that they can or they can't. I chair the meeting. So can I tell you when the Finance and Audit Committee meetings were recorded or not recorded?
Well, September 14th was the last one.
So you know more than I do.
Okay.
I didn't check to see when the last one was that was recorded or not. I don't feel that it's my responsibility, frankly.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking Council as a whole. I think it's problematic because many people in the community, like myself, work, so we can't attend 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. meetings. This council spent a great amount of money to equip the SART boardroom for meetings, and now the council, the whole meetings no longer occur there. I would hope that equipment is made use of for the Finance and Audit Committee meetings, particularly when discussions are not made at meetings here, they're made there and we can't watch them.
Okay, notwithstanding the fact that you had asked council, our city clerk has chimed in. Ms. Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I understand he doesn't want to hear from staff, but I just wanted to point out that there is no policy or procedures in place for recordings of meetings, whether they be committee or council meetings, and nor is there a requirement in our current procedure bylaw or the community charter, so I just wanted to make that very clear.
Thank you very much. Ms. Samra?
One recommendation that I've been making for about a year now is that Given the workload and the importance and prominence of the Finance and Audit Committee, that council consider making it like a CAL, a Committee of the Whole for Finance and Audit, and that way council would be able to delegate some decision-making, and it would be treated in the same manner as CAL meetings were. So it may mean that the Finance and Audit Committee would start to meet over here, and then there would be the recording, just not that it's a bylaw requirement or a legal requirement, but it's a convention of council to record official council meetings. So that then it would fall under those parameters, and that's something that you can consider as part of the procedure bylaw rewrite. So I think it's proven its worth, and give some thought to making that a committee of the whole of council.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. Mr. Barkley asked, directed this question at all of council, so I'll give an attempt here. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm just familiar we don't have a policy on that. I look forward to, though, incorporating, because there's a lot of confusion, what's filmed, what's not, what can happen with the camera up there or not, etc. So I look forward to a solid policy on this. I'm just curious, before this council, what previous finance audit committees did and if they were filmed. Like in the past, I don't know. So this, because it seems like there's lots of, not chaos, but lots of criticism about on this subject. And I'm curious because being following council for numerous years, I just don't recall the previous, how the Finance Audit Committee in the past was filmed. And I'm all for about consistency and doing what Ms. Samra just recommended. Get a policy. Let's just have it clear so everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. Increasingly, I think it's not my impression and the impression of many in the public that more and more discussions are made in those Finance and Audit Committee meetings rather than Council of the Whole or General Council. And so that increases the need for some sort of public access to them other than 10 a.m. meetings on weekdays.
Your next question is on 10A?
Yes, yeah. So 10A, staff spoke of this implementation plan. I didn't catch when that was coming. Implementation, Mr. Sims said, was going to occur late in the spring. But my first question is, okay, question A. I have question A and question B. Question A, did I miss, is there a date when you'll receive this implementation, the updated implementation plan? Did you hear that and I missed it?
Spring.
Just spring.
Spring.
All right. Okay. My second part of that question, Ms. Samra mentioned that as part of that implementation plan coming this spring, that there will be an update on user fees, which have already increased substantially for this program. And Ms. Samra also stated that maybe there will be a change to the user fees. So my question to council is, if that change to user fees means a recommendation for an increase to user fees, will you agree to that?
Councillor Bestwick.
I heard end of March, or at least I thought I heard end of March from Mr. Sims. I could be incorrect in that, but end of March, spring. And rhetorical question, I wouldn't want to respond whether support or not support anything coming out of a report that we're going to see at the end of March at this point in time.
Councillor Armstrong.
I'm just going to echo what Councillor Bestwick said too. I'm not going to make any decision based on anything until we see a report. And I think Ms. Samra has just given us a heads up that there's going to be information in there that could affect user fees. And until we see that report, we don't know if there's, if it's going to go up or go down. We don't know that. So I'm of a similar opinion as Councillor Bestwick that until we actually see the report, I'm not going to make any decisions or state what I'll do.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. The answer is no. I won't support it. I didn't support bringing in recycling, and I didn't support bringing in yard waste. So, no.
Yep. Thank you.
Only if it goes down.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Councillor Brennan.
I would just say that I'm not a fan of user fees. I think they're inherently unfair. And the rich, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or you're poor, you have the same cost for essential services. That is not typically the way Canadians see provision of services. So I would have to say, well, I think that they're inherently unfair and that I'm not particularly drawn to them. I would wait for a report because I am kind of prudent too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. The next speaker is Amanda Orem on 8AC. Is it 8AC?
Mayor and Council,
Is it 8AC?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I reside in Nanaimo. It has a Part A, Part B question to 8AC. Part A is for Kevin Story, who is sick and is unable to come to the meeting tonight and participate in question period. His question, he wants to know if, as promised, is there going to be a detailed itemized expense report, reimbursed expenses for our CAO and Mr. Mema?
Mr. Armstrong. Councilor Armstrong.
I don't think that's on our agenda, is it?
It's part of the agenda operating results for 9 months ending in 2017. We don't have a report, so we don't have those expenses.
That's right. We're here.
Is it council expenses
the
or
items
not
tonight are
staff
to receive the
expenses?
report.
Oh, okay. Do we have we still
So
promise
the time
those?
to ask the question would have been at Finance and Audit, or when the Finance and Audit minutes were published.
So we can go to the next finance meeting and ask?
That's correct.
Awesome. I'll let Kevin know. And then Part B of this is related from Peter Urquhart, who also couldn't make it tonight, with council expenses that were referred to. When reading the expenses that are referred to, it is clear that some councillors have much less overall expenses when compared to some others. Those with larger total expenses are primarily expending them towards education, which provides obvious benefits them towards their duties and the city as a whole. For those who have much less amount of total expenses, Councillor Bestwick, Fuller, Hong, Kip, Yoakum, and Armstrong, are they attending educational courses that are relevant to their role using their own dollars? And if so, what courses have they been attending?
Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks for the question. Is this a criticism of those that have other work or other lives that may not be afforded the opportunity time-wise to attend courses and otherwise? So it's almost, it seems backwards to me. So if we spend less because somebody else spends more on taking courses, that what's the motive of the question? I don't even understand what the motivation is.
I'm just being a tool tonight to ask questions for people who are unable to operate in question period. So these questions are going to be asked, and it will save many emails towards council members.
I don't really have an answer. Which courses is he making reference to that other people have attended for educational purposes that I could say would have been a benefit to me attending or not? So unless he's willing to come forward and say, 3 members of council attended this course and you didn't, why didn't you? And look at how much wiser, better, smarter, more prepared they are than you. I'm not sure. So if I spent more than anybody else, would it be, well, you didn't spend enough on education and you spent too much on X? Like, it seems like it doesn't matter which way you go. So I'll be happy for Mr. Urquhart to let me know of courses that he believes that I should be attending if my schedule permits to keep up with my colleagues.
Has anybody attended any courses?
So I think
yes, on an annual basis, we all do.
Just a moment, Council. I think we need to explore whether or not, at question period, people can ask for others who are not in attendance. And I'm not trying to suggest that people out there who are not here tonight shouldn't be able to ask questions, but we have to be able to figure out, as in, this is a typical example, where we need to be able to ask for clarification of the person standing at the podium. So I'm of the opinion myself that only folks that have questions to ask that must be present here. We have no other mechanism to be able to go back and forth to the folks at home, to be able to, flush out exactly what it is that they're asking for.
Fair enough.
Okay? So just a second. Councillor Armstrong's first.
Okay, yeah, because the question I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that some people have spent more dollars, and his impression was that was more for their own personal use, not for the city use. Is that correct? If you wouldn't mind just reading it, because that's what I
With the
but-
council expenses that were referred to, when reading the expenses that are referred to, it is clear that some councillors have much less overall expenses when compared to some others. Those with a larger total expenses are primarily expending them towards education, which provides obvious benefits towards their duties and the city as a whole. For those who have much less amount of total expenses, are they attending educational courses that are relevant to their role using their own dollars? And if so, what courses have they been attending?
I think it's exactly as Councillor Bestwick said. Some people don't work. I myself don't work, so I'm fortunate enough that I can attend the UBCM and all the other things, and I take advantage of all that, especially as a newly elected councillor. Like, I take every learning opportunity that I possibly can, but I don't work. So I have that luxury that I can do that. Other people don't have that luxury. They have to work, because this, people have to be reminded this is technically supposed to be a part-time job, but I bet you more of us put in more than 20 hours every week. I feel pretty confident in that. So I think that's question in some respects is unfair, because it depends on what your circumstances are. There could be family commitments, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's just my answer. Like, I will take every learning opportunity that I can to benefit the city. And that's how I look at it. The more I learn about government and what other communities are doing, the better I'm going to be able to do my job here. Thank you.
Councillor Yoakum.
I'm not sure where that's going with that. I heard my name mentioned in there, and I'm really fortunate and privileged and blessed to have a job. I work with First Nations and 9 First Nations in child welfare and try to better different lives from the impacts of colonization, residential school, Indian hostels, etc. So for someone to email you or text you and grow me on my courses and my learning curve is absolutely absurd. I'm fortunate to work daily with people like Mary Ellen Trapella, Fawn, wonderful, beautiful elders from all across the province, where I'll spend my time much more than go sit in some meeting with some bunch of ex-city managers around the province, pom-pomming themselves. So I found that question really unfair to myself, and asking about taking courses with my I've gone to university, fortunate and privileged to have 2 degrees, so to say, have I taken courses or judging if I've had courses is, I wish I'd have that conversation with me on what I've done on a day-to-day in my life and my journey to get to where I am in life, because I don't need all these acronym things that people go to. There's some benefit, of course, and I've gone to a few times, but also I work full-time, and I'm fortunate to get wisdom elsewhere besides some program of a bunch of people in suits. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I guess I'll try to answer it. In the first 2 years, I think I was criticized being one of the highest spenders. Now I'm criticized being one of the lowest spenders. As a new councillor, I had to learn for my first 2 years, so I took everything I could that was offered to me to the availability of my time. Last year, I looked at the options. I read the agenda items, what they were offering. Didn't think I could learn from those, so I didn't waste taxpayers' money. Maybe next year or this coming up year, there's interesting things that I want to learn that I haven't learned before, because, again, a lot of this stuff is repeated over and over again about the same stuff. There's only so much we can talk about marijuana before we actually figure out what's happening with marijuana. So I make those decisions based on what I need to learn, not because, hey, I got nothing to do this weekend, so I'm going to go take a course for the heck of it. So that's my answer. Whether I'm highest spender or lowest spender, I seem to get criticized for it. So I'll defend all my actions, and I don't regret any of the stuff I have taken or not taken. Thank you.
Okay. So there are no more to that one. You've got 2 more that you've asked questions on. One is 10D, and the other one is the garbage implementation. Are they for you or are they for others?
The garbage implementation is a question for Councillor Yocum. It's for garbage. It was talking
No,
about.
are the questions for you, or are they your questions, or are they from someone else
They are
who's
from someone
texting or
else.
emailing you?
They are from someone else. The question period system is broken. We need to be able to provide an avenue for people that are unable to come down here and provide information for those who have questions. A question has arose during the council meeting about garbage implementation that I believe is fair enough to ask.
Okay, Councillor Yocum.
Yes, what's the question, Mayor?
In the discussion around garbage implementation, Councillor Yocum mentioned the unilateral internal decision that he would like to avoid in the future if there are significant overages. Does the unilateral internal decision in regards to additional amount that was spent without council consent mean that more than one person was at fault for this overage, which was not approved? If so, how did this problem happen? How did the existing processes fail? If not, what did that statement mean?
What's
The question is, what does
who asked? It's like Peter Urquhart asked about my expenditures, if I'm educated or not previously. What's this question, please? From
It's
who?
asking about unilateral internal decisions.
It does matter because she's asked. She said the first two.
Because everybody identifies themselves when they come to the podium with their
I'm going to answer your question. What I think the question is, but who asked that, please?
It's Peter Urquhart again.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my answer to was my comment referring to Mr. Sims was, Mr. Sims, respectfully, that the almost $500,000 overages was not your reasoning. I'm not saying it verbatim, but the gist of my conversation. Nevertheless, in the future, we cannot have near $500,000 overages that, as the wording said, which the whole public has, deviated from the council's motion from 6.2 to 7.1 and upping almost 5,000 extra bins for that cost. So that's what I was referring to.
Okay.
So that we cannot have that. How it got to that point, I don't know. Like I said, you just heard my previous answer. I'm not here day to day, but it's unacceptable. Any staff is unacceptable, and I won't elaborate more on the staff, and staff can answer if they want, but nonetheless, that was what I meant. And I hope that's crystal clear for Mr. Urquhart.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So this is my question on parking variances for number 20 Prideaux. If you guys have not visited the area of 20 Prideaux and Mill Street, it has one sidewalk. It is very congested. The parking there is completely full for blocks on end when there's events already happening downtown at Mafia, Sutton Park, and Swayalana. Has there been a traffic study? Has anybody even considered the traffic congestion that's going to happen in that area when the seniors' apartment building gets built and there's only 17 parking stalls that is suited for a seniors delegated building that has care aides that are delegated to have 3.36 hours of care per senior who gets assistance, plus their family and plus cleaners, etc. Has this even been considered for number 20 Prideaux?
So all I can say is that all of the items that were in the report tonight were given consideration in addition to questions that were asked of our staff.
Okay. And then there was talking about bringing in an overhaul of parking variances, the parking variance bylaws. Is there an ETA on when this will happen?
I'm sorry. Okay, so first quarter? First quarter.
Pardon?
The parking regulations will be coming back at the end of first quarter, or within the first quarter.
So like March, April?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a couple of other folks that wish to ask questions that weren't able to do so because the sheet had been presented to me. So the first one is Mr. Bill Manners.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have three quick questions. First one is the details of the agendas. A few months back, we heard about eScribe being used, about moving towards a paperless system. Do we have a date on when that is going to start?
Councillor Armstrong?
I'm using eScribe now. Those of us that have iPads are using them. I think those that work off the Surface Pros aren't there yet. Is that right?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Council and Mr. Manners. We are currently using eScribe. Councillors that have the eScribe app and Apple iPads are able to use it. Those with Surface Pros, the app is coming and should be available very soon. But yes, it is being used, and we are trying to lessen the amount of paper we use every week.
Okay, maybe I need to rephrase my question. Is it going to be available for Joe Public?
No. So the app is available. It's licensed, and it costs money for those licenses. So it'll just be council and staff that will have the license for the app. eScribe, how it will benefit the public and be available for you is once we start using it for the filming of agendas, council meetings, which we do use now, but we're working with the company to work out the kinks. The video isn't the greatest. It will be the accessibility and the different options you can use on our website with the eScribe program. So it will be available to you that way.
Terrific, thank you. My second question is, when we discussed Northfield, why did we talk about the $125,000 instead of talking about what we are responsible for as a city, which would be 225? Or 200 and do the math. Why was it the wrong figure in there?
Mr. Mema.
So the right figure is the additional budget is 525. There is a cost sharing, which is the 50%, but the relevant number from an asset perspective is actually the 525. So when I'm booking my asset when it's done, I'm not booking it at 50%. I'm booking it at 100%, and I'm just showing the difference in funding sources, that's all.
Thank you. The reason why I asked that is because I was under the impression that we were looking at over $1 million in additional charges. And the third question was question period. It seems to be different every week that I come here. Is there a plan to come up with a question period that works for everybody, that everybody knows about before they walk in the door?
Ms. Gurry.
And I'll sit down while that's been answered.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Manners. Last week I wasn't able to give a fulsome overview of the changes that we had presented to you, Council, and posted on our website, where you just have to write down your question and, not your question, you just have to write down your name and the item that you're asking a question to. You don't have to write down your question any longer. That staff, the corporate officer, will remain present during question period. And basically it's back to the way it was, with just a list of those that want to speak, and that the questions be directed towards council, and that the chair take the initiative to ensure that there are items on the agenda. So basically there's not very many changes. The other thing that was in the announcement was that we will look at a comprehensive review as part of the procedural bylaw rewrite, and have public engagement and input from the public with respect to that.
Do you feel you need to add anything to that, Councillor?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to actually thank staff for trying new things, because I think this is good, because it's traditionally what we see is when we see a new procedure bylaw or something come up, it's usually staff driven. It's given to us, here's your procedure bylaw. It's good to see that we can say, well, how come you didn't do this during question period? How come you didn't do it this way? At least we're trying different things, and we know what is going to work and what isn't going to work. So I don't mind trying different things and weed out the stuff that doesn't work. So I hope there's a couple more versions of this that is going to suit everybody's needs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is also about question period. It's Mr. McGee. You can just nod if your question's already been answered.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I want to thank Bill for asking most of my question. But my question is, if a person is unable to attend or chooses not to attend, because we can't judge the reason for not being here, this question period would become a town hall meeting where I could sit up there with my phone and be texting back and forth and come down here with 10 different people's questions for council, and I don't think that's right. I think it should be that the people who attend the meeting make the effort to get here, and I know that might sound discriminating against somebody who maybe has great difficulty getting here, and I really think it should just be the people who are attending the meeting in the audience, in the gallery, that have the right to ask the questions at question period. And I'd like to see these sort of things all listed out in a question period document or a letter or whatever, so that we know exactly what the rules are and what we're playing with. I too have difficulties getting to the meeting. Tonight I'm running short of air. You know, I have an oxygen problem and I really shouldn't be here. I should be at home on my oxygen, but I made the effort to be here because I enjoy hearing what I hear at the meetings here. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brennan.
No, it's not a question for
Okay.
Mr. McGee.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I was going to, well, some folks might think I was looking up the hockey scores or something like that. I was actually trying to quickly bring up our procedure bylaw to determine whether or not the notion of folks writing in or emailing in is covered within our procedure bylaw, but at least that we should be looking at that in the rewrite. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
I was just going to say it becomes extremely difficult to determine whether a question is mine or someone else's if I'm asking it on my own behalf or someone else's. So I'm not sure that we should be trying to govern that or police if you were here asking a question on somebody else's behalf, because a person can simply walk up to the podium and say, I have a question, give their question. I think if we thought that somebody would monopolize question period by bringing down 10 questions from 10 people, we should just limit the number of questions instead of getting into interrogations about what's your motivation for this question, who are you asking it for, why do they want to know. Let's just hear a question from our citizens and answer it.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Hung. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.